Hello, how are you? I am an English teacher. I am also a language learner. I am currently learning Spanish and I have been learning Spanish for about 6 years. I started in school. But I am currently living in Spain to practice my Spanish. And by the way, I have my bottle here because it's got the microphone stuck to it and I couldn't think of another way to do that. So this is my microphone. So I thought because I am an English teacher and a language learner, I would give you some tips on the best ways that I have learned Spanish. So ways that have helped me to learn a language. As a language learner and a teacher, I feel like I understand difficulties of learning a language. I think learning a language is so difficult whenever you're older. So I started when I was 16. I had never been exposed to Spanish before in my life. And it's really, really hard. I've been practicing for 6 years and I'm still not nearly fluent. And it can be very discouraging at times. Whenever I talk to a native, my head can go blank. I need to ask them to speak slowly. If I don't understand every word, I get too stressed and then I can't think of what to reply. So I understand the difficulties. So that's why I like being a teacher as well. Of course, the best way to learn language is through immersion. And immersion means moving to the country that speaks the language. So moving, if you're learning English, moving to the UK, Ireland, America, Australia, and living there, because being fully immersed in the language, that's how children learn, and it forces you to learn the language. So that's why I'm living in Spain, to force myself to learn Spanish. So my first tip is to move to the country that speaks the language, because living here I'm forced to speak Spanish. Even if I feel too embarrassed, if I go to the shops, I have to speak Spanish. If I go to the doctors, the school I work in, I have to obviously speak Spanish. So you're fully immersed, you're forced. But obviously that's not always possible to move to a country, especially if you're learning a language for an online job. So you're living in your native country. So if you can't move to the country or you can't immerse yourself in the language, my next bit of advice would be to take lessons with a professional or with a teacher. Okay, so this is something that I've done. I have taken lessons with the app called italki. This website has been so helpful for me because it is one-to-one personalized with a native speaker. It helps you to practice your listening and speaking skills, and you can learn anywhere at any time. The lessons are just pay as you go, so you don't have to do a subscription. You can try with different teachers. You can do trials that are a little bit cheaper and do a few lessons to find your perfect teacher. I'm going to show you an example of what a lesson looks like. This website is great because there are so many teachers to choose from and there's a lot of information given on each teacher, so you can try and find the perfect teacher for you. So here's an example.
Hi, I'm Sheila Schrickle from the US, living in Luxembourg. I have a bachelor's degree in English language.
You can see the teacher's interest and teaching skills to find the best for you, and there's a clear booking website. So here is the lesson that I had with Sheila. First of all, she introduced herself. She was very kind and friendly. And then I had an opportunity to talk and she listened to me. Afterwards, she helped with any mistakes. My iTalk experience was very positive. Now, if you are interested in having a lesson, I do have a code, which if you buy a $10 lesson, you get $5 off, and you can use the code HOURS in my link below. Now, this code is only available for the first 50 people that click on it. So if you are interested, make sure to use it soon. these lessons have really helped with my confidence, so I definitely recommend doing one-to-one personalized lessons online. So the advice so far has been: move to the country and immerse yourself in the language. 2, take some personalized one-to-one lessons online. 3, if you're on your own and you don't want to do either of those things, a great way to practice is to just talk to yourself. Okay, so if you're going shopping, practice talking in the language about what you're buying. While you are cooking your dinner, practice talking to yourself, making your dinner in English. This is what I do to help me practice my Spanish, so I'm going to show you an example of what this looks like. So this is me shopping in Mercedona, and I practice speaking Spanish while picking up my groceries. And then here afterwards, whenever I get home, I practice saying what I've bought. And this is just to up my confidence and keep my memory going so I remember all the different words. I am going to bring you shopping with me to show you how I practice speaking Spanish when I'm doing daily activities such as shopping. So for example, I would say, voy a comprar las gambas. Okay, but I'm now going to do it in English so you can practice. So I'm buying prawns and eggs, putting them in my trolley. There is the fish. I'm not going to buy any fish, but I'm just looking. The squid, prawns, mussels, all sitting on ice. Now I'm going to buy some salmon, frozen salmon from the freezer. I'm looking for the best one. I want a big salmon. I think that's quite big. So I would say this all in Spanish in my head. Now I'm buying self-raising flour because I want to bake a cake. I'm now buying tomato sauce for my pasta, some butter for my cake that I'm going to make. Now there's some milk, but I'm going to buy fresh milk because I love fresh milk. Now for some bread, I like baguettes for lunch, and I like to have a loaf of bread, a very big loaf of bread to put in the freezer for emergency snacks when I'm hungry. And I always have, well, there's some strawberry jam, but I prefer raspberry jam on my toast. Here are some bananas, green bananas, so that they can... Oh, peppers. I'm getting a bag for... I hate the way you need bags. I've got a pepper, a big red pepper in my trolley. And I only need 1 lemon for my cake that I'm going to make. I'm going to make a lemon drizzle cake. Potatoes, 3 potatoes to have with the salmon. And now I'm finished. I'm putting my shopping in my bag. And this is how I practice Spanish out in the real world. So a really great way to practice speaking whenever you're on your own is to just talk out loud and describe things. So that's what I sometimes do to practice my Spanish and to get more confident on my own. So I would say, tengo 6 huevos. Tengo pan blanco y es muy grande, mucho pan. Y tengo leche, tengo un limón y el color es amarillo. Y tengo mantequilla con sal, 3 patatas. Okay, so in English, I would say, if this was my shop in English, I would say, I have 2 frozen salmon. I have some prawns. I have 6 eggs, free range eggs. I have a red pepper, 4 bananas, big loaf of bread, fresh milk, a baguette, a lemon, a yellow lemon, tinned tomatoes, raising agent, so baking powder to raise the cakes for baking, raspberry jam for my toast, butter with salt for my cake that I'm going to make. So I'm going to make a lemon cake with this. And 3 potatoes for my salmon. I'm going to make that. So that's just a small little shop. So a good way to practice is to just speak out loud to yourself. Describe what you've got. Describe your shopping, for example. Another way is to just practice speaking while you're doing things. So for example, I would say, voy a hacer mi almuerzo, voy a tener pan con mantequilla y voy a cortar. Pienso que es cortar. Sometimes you can't remember the words. Just practice. If you're on your own, you're not embarrassed to practice. Because I'm on YouTube, I'm a bit embarrassed to say everything because I don't like to make mistakes, because I know a lot of my learners are from Spanish speaking countries. But yes, if I make a mistake, please correct me. So for example, in English, I would say, I am going to make my lunch. I have got bread. I'm going to cut it in half and then butter it. And I'm going to have a very plain bread. I'm just going to have butter and bread. You can also use this method whenever you're just going out for a walk. So if you're going out for a walk in the town, you can practice speaking in your head and describe what you can see. You could go to the beach, describe what you can see. So I am going to do this now in English so that you can practice hearing it. And then maybe you can give it a go whenever you're out on a walk next. On the beach, there is a volleyball net, so you can play volleyball if you like. There are also football nets to play football. There is the closed down restaurant, another closed down restaurant. And over there is the port, so there are lots of boats and ships beside that port. There is the ocean. There are a few small waves, and you can also sit on the bench and just watch the ocean, watch the day go by. There are a few clouds in the sky, but there's a blue sky, which is nice. Over there are mountains. So I would go down for a walk and I would just describe things in Spanish in my head or out loud if no one is around. So I might say, hay montañas. I'm going to make a picture with my stones, okay? So you have to guess what I'm making. Okay? See if you can work it out. That looks a little bit scary, but what is it? It's a sheep. These are the ears, eyes, nose, face. Forgot to put a mouth on it. Es una oveja. My final piece of advice is to read books in the language that you're learning. So read English books. So I am currently reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid in Spanish because it is a children's book, so it's got simple English. Now, a book that I'm reading in English is Anne of Green Gables, and this is such a famous book, children's book in English, and it is such a good story. It's also a TV series on Netflix, so I definitely recommend watching that to practice your English because it uses very clear and quite formal English, so it's a great way to learn. So I'm going to read some of my book from Anne of Green Gables, and it's such a funny book as well. It's so easy to read. So listen to my book now. I have got a Kindle and I love my Kindle, and I'm on chapter 17, A New Interest in Life. The next afternoon, Anne, bending over her patchwork, happened to glance out the window. And Diana was out there. In a hurry, Anne was out of the house and flying down to her. Your mother hasn't relented, has she? Diana shook her head mournfully. No, and oh Anne, she says I'm never to play with you again. I've cried and cried, and I told her it wasn't your fault, but it wasn't any use. She said I was only to come for 10 minutes, and she's timing me on the clock. 10 minutes isn't very long to say an eternal farewell, said Anne tearfully. Oh, Diana, will you promise faithfully never to forget me, the friend of your youth, no matter what dear friend that you may have? Indeed I will, sobbed Diana, and I've never had another bosom friend. I don't want to have another one. I couldn't love anybody else as much as I love you. Oh, Diana, cried Anne, clasping her hands, do you love me? Why, of course I do. Don't you know that? No, Anne drew a long breath. I thought you liked me, but I didn't know that you loved me. Why, Diana, I didn't think anybody could love me. Nobody has ever loved me since I can ever remember. Oh, this is wonderful. It's a ray of light which will forever shine on the darkness of a path served from thee, Diana. Oh, just say it once again. Oh, I love you devoutly, Anne, said Diana, and I always will. Be sure of that. And I will always love thee, Diana, said Anne, solemnly extending her hand. In the years to come, thy memory will shine like a star over my lonely life at that last story we read together. Diana, wilt thou give me a lock of thy jet black hair for evermore? Have you got anything to cut it with? Queried Diana, wiping away the tears. Yes, I've got my patchwork scissors. She solemnly clipped one of Diana's curls. Fare thee well, my beloved friend. Henceforth we must be strangers, though living side by side, but my heart will be faithful to you. Anne stood and watched Diana out of sight, waving her goodbye. So that's just a little chapter from my book, Anne from Green Gables. So if you liked it, it is free online and I'd recommend giving it a read. I'm just going to read you more of the book because it's so funny, so I'm going to continue. Diana gave me a lock of her hair and I'm going to sew it up in a little bag and wear it around my neck all my life. Please see that it is buried with me, for I don't believe I'll live very long. Perhaps when she sees me lying cold and dead before her, Mrs. Barry may feel remorse for what she has done and will let Diana come to my funeral. I don't think there is much fear of you dying of grief, as long as you can talk, Anne, said Marilla unsympathetically. So this child is about 11 years old, so she's very dramatic and very funny and just makes me laugh.